Hi, welcome to HQ Live. I'm Vicki Hoth from Handi Quilter. We are so busy getting ready for Academy, but we've decided to pull one of our past HQ Lives that are so popular because it's about Pro Stitcher Premium, and we're going to learn a lot about that at Academy, and we want you to review. Even if you're not coming to Academy, it's a good HQ Live to review some of those features with the Pro Stitcher Premium, and just maybe you're going to pick up something new. So watch today and see what you can pick up that's new. Hi, I'm Vicki Hoth from Handi Quilter, and today I'd like to introduce you to our new Pro Stitcher Premium. I know you're familiar with the Pro Stitcher Standard. That's the program that you've been using every day, and in loving the program, well, we have new features, a new look of our program. So if you'll look at our screen, look at the screen with me, you will see what you're familiar with today. You'll see that you have 4 tabs on the left side: Design, Quilt, Setting, Shutdown. You will see at the bottom that you have information, and according to, if I were to open up Design, you have all these different functions, and with each one of those functions, you have tabs or buttons across the bottom and possibly to the right that you'll be able to use for that function. So as I go through here, you're familiar with this, you know how this works as we go through that. Okay, so let's change over and let's look at our new format. This is Pro Stitcher Premium. Looks different, doesn't it? But all those functions that you're familiar with, that you're used to using, they are there. You just need to know where to find them and how it works. It's going to be really simple. First of all, across the top, you'll find tabs. File tab, Edit tab, Area, Modify. Oh, Modify is a new word, but we'll get there and you'll understand what it does. Repeat, Pro Stitcher. Oh, what does that do for us? You're going to understand all these tabs when we're finished today. But we just want to go through the layout and going to go back to the File tab. With the File tab and every one of these tabs across the top, you will see that there is a ribbon of functions. So my file, that would be where I would go choose a design. And in the File tab, you'll see Design, Workspace, Area, Save, Close, Clear All, Update, Shutdown. Wow, there are a couple of buttons here that are new. So first of all, the Workspace. So while we're here, let's talk about this Workspace. That is the Workspace. Where my cursor is going around, this is the Workspace. Anything that happens in this big space is my workspace, okay? So each time I change tabs, you will see that there are different functions in the ribbon. So I go to Area. You're familiar with 2-corner, you're familiar with multi-point, but you'll just have to find them in a different location. Once you get used to this, as I touch each one of these, you're going to see in the ribbon, and that's what this is called, functions that work with that tab. So let's still go back to File. And first of all, I want to bring in a design. So there, we'll go to the Design, and we're going to Open. But before I press the Open, you can see these are my recent designs that I've been working with. You're familiar with the Recent Design tab. They are right here. It'll save my last 10 designs that I've been working with in this recent drop down. So let's go ahead and open, and with we have over 300 new designs added to our folders. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a block. We'll choose a feather design. and open that up. Looking at the screen, you can see the design, and up at the top, you'll see Pro Stitcher Premium. That's what you're working with. Feather block, that's the name of the block, and the size, the width and the height of this design. Okay, so let's look at what else is on our screen. Our tabs across the top we talked about. I do have a tab as we scroll over here to the right side. This tab right here is our settings tab. If I press the settings, it gives me all the options that I have normally in my settings. I can work with my display. I can set the defaults, my speed, auto jump, stitches per inch, tie-offs, pull-ups, pause, delay, cut thread, and my advanced. Remember, in settings, that's where we found the advanced. What did we find in advanced? We found the general, and over here on the right side, this is called my sidebar. In my general before, I had my thread break sensor if I had a fusion or an infinity. Verify quilt, that's that box that would pop up, and I can turn that off if I don't want to have that on my screen. And simulation, this is where I would go and activate my simulation. My communications, this is where if I have an HQ16, this is where I get handlebar control. Connect motors, this is if my motors were disabled, and this is if reconnect machine is if I didn't have my machine and my Pro Stitcher talking to each other. So you can see right there, same functions that we had on the standard. This is where you find them. Go back to settings, advanced, and here's your speed profile, changing your motors. Okay, let's go across over here. This question mark. Now, I have two question marks. I have this question mark and I have this question mark. I'll show you what each one does for you. This question mark, when you press that, you see over here, it gives me a help file. This is my manual right here. And so I can search anything on my manual, just type in and open up these tabs, and you can find out what everything will do for you and help you. It also gives you more information online, information there for you to go and just get more information. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. And the other one that's in this, let's go back here, this question mark on the right, back over about. This is where you're going to find out what version you are running. So this is the Pro Stitcher Premium 2016. The version right now today is 402. Also, if you are using designs that are encrypted, there's your key, and you can copy that key. That's actually a button right there that will copy that key so that you can use those designs. Okay, so we've gone across the tabs across the top. Let's move down. Now, I'm going to go back to File, and you see there's my ribbon of functions with File. Let's look at these functions down the side here. I have an undo, I have a redo. It's grayed out because I haven't done anything to redo. Baseline, ruler, follow. Well, I may not want this grid on all the time. So what these buttons are here are reassignable buttons. They are called quick access buttons. So right now, I would like to edit one of these. So to be able to edit those buttons, I am going to go over to Settings, and I want to edit my display. So I'm going to press Display, and on my sidebar right here, you can see that I can edit the size of my monitor or the monitor display. But this button and this button right here, Touch and Assign, those two buttons are the ones that we're going to talk about right now. If you are using your computer with a mouse like I am today, I could turn off my buttons, or I could make them smaller. If I press the touch and so it turns it off, look what it has done. It's given me a larger workspace, but it's made my buttons really small, my icons there. A little hard to use with my finger. I actually like it large all the time. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that back on, and it enlarged those buttons so they're easier to press and get the right button that you want. The other button is an assign button. I'm going to take these buttons here on the left, and I want to reassign my grid. So if I press the grid, it pops out all of these different functions that I can reassign that button to have. And I kind of like to have the, let's see, what do I want? The gears. I want to have the gears, and it's a new name, but this is your freehand button. So if I want to just go freehand without using the Pro Stitcher and doing some little stippling or some designs without Pro Stitcher, I want to be able to press that button fast and do it, and then maybe go back into the Pro Stitcher. So I am reassigning that grid button to a gears button. And then I can go ahead and turn off those buttons. So now you can see these are and all of these can be reassigned. If you don't want to have something here, oh, look what I've got on the front screen. I have a horizontal and a vertical channel lock. Remember how we had to go back down a couple of layers? I have them here because I assigned those two buttons to be a horizontal and vertical channel lock. So those buttons you can reassign. The next row of buttons, these buttons are my workspace buttons. Remember we talked about this area here being my workspace? These 5 buttons work my workspace. Select, that's where I select a design. So if I unselected it or selected it, touch that and it was unselected and now it's selected. Pan, and now I can pan. This is not a reposition. This is a viewing. So I've got the crosshair and everything. I can't see something on my screen, so I can pan. My zoom button, I can take my finger, I can draw a box around that, and it'll actually zoom on that area that I drew the box around. My transform, okay, I'm going to go ahead and zoom this back so you can see it. This is a transform button. It's X form, but it means to transform, and if I select that, it places handles around my design. Those handles allow me to increase my size of the design and also rotate. That is nice to have sometimes when you're fine-tuning. And then the next button is your simulate button. And this is when I want to move my crosshair. I want control of my crosshair, maybe when I'm doing it on my laptop or when I'm doing it in my lap rather than having it attached to the machine. I want to create an area. So I'd move my crosshair and then I would start creating my area. So those buttons are my workspace buttons. And if I want to turn the simulator off, I will need to select another one of the buttons, and usually the one that I always like to select is select. Okay, while I have the button selected, I now can just, without pressing drag or drop, I can reposition my design, just like that, okay? So if I want to put it over someplace here, I can do that. By having selected, I can do that. Okay, now let's work down at the bottom for a minute here. This bottom bar is my status bar. So let's put my cursor over it and you can see that's my select all design, and I only have one design on, but if I had many designs I could select them all. This is multi-select. This is where you get to choose the design you want to select. So let's go into our display, not to our display, our file, design, and let's just choose another design. So we have 2 designs on, and we'll move that one aside because that is selected. And we can see both of those. Let's go back to our select, multi-select. I can select that one, both. But as I do this, you can see over in the sidebar, I'm working in my workspace. It's giving me the names. If I only want to select one of them, I can select the one I want to have selected, feather triangles. That's telling me that it went red, it's selected. If I want to select it all because it created a group, I only want the block. Let's not select the triangle. And now I have the block. So I've got my select. If I don't want to select anything, I can press that. So nothing is selected. But because I have my select button turned on here, I can select either one of those or both of them. Okay, so let's go across the bottom, the status bar. This button is Zoom to Design. So if I were to press it, it would zoom to the selected design. The next button, oh, it's grayed out. Well, it means has something to do with Zoom to Area. So let's go up across the top and find my Area tab. And let's create an area. I need to go to Simulation. And I want to create an area. Move this over. We'll create it right over here and make those designs move there. 2 corner. We'll move it down. 2 corner. And then I can actually change my size right here. Okay? But I'm going to leave it just like it is. Now now this is active, so if I want to zoom to area, it allowed me to zoom to that area into the full workspace. The next button is the actual button, and that gives you the actual size of the design. So if we were to pan over to this design and I press the actual, you can see that if this stitched out, this is the size that it would be stitching. The next button is my home button, or refresh. You're familiar with the refresh button. It has a little home on it now. Refresh, it refreshes my full screen with everything on it. All the designs, the crosshair, the area, everything is on that. Then I have a zoom. This is my zoom. We're used to running our finger up the screen. Now we have a minus and a plus. And that will zoom so it's small, or zoom large, or I can use the slider. So we talked about the zoom button on the workspace, but I also have zoom functions here as well. Okay, now let's look at our sidebar for a minute. On the sidebar, I can actually close the sidebar using this arrow. Now it gave me a larger workspace, but I don't have my sidebar function, so I kind of like having that available. But you can also adjust that size and make a larger area or a smaller area. But you always want to have that sidebar there so you can work with those tools as well. All right, let's go up to and go through our tabs. So with our File tab, this is where we brought our design in. That's Design. I have a Workspace tab. This is the workspace. I have 3 designs and I have an area. I can save my workspace, and you can see here I have 3 saved. I can save that and bring that in later if I didn't get to finish what I was doing, and it will stay as individual designs. It won't baseline it as one complete design. Okay, so if I were to save that, I would come over here to Save, and it gives me the option to save my selected design, to save my workspace, or I can save my area. This is something new for us. We can save an area. So if I created an area such as a circle or some strange design that I don't want to have to recreate because it had so many multi-points in, I could save that. I could resize that area, or I could reposition it to another location on my quilt. So I was only having to create it maybe once. So I can save that area. Then if I want to close the design that is on here, I would press the close button and it would close that design. Selected, or the workspace, or the area. I could close one thing at a time, or I could go to my Clear All button and it would close everything out. I didn't have to do each design individually and then the area. I could clear all and it's gone. Or I could undo and bring it back. Update, this is where you'll do your updates, and here is your shutdown button. So you shut down, reboot, or exit to Windows. Okay, let's go to Edit. On our Edit, this is where you're going to find your history. When I press that, you can see the history that I've been working with here. You can scroll down and see every bit of that history. My undo, we'll go ahead and close that history out. Undo, redo. I have a cut, copy, and a paste. Now, if you're familiar with any program, Windows-based Word program, you will know what cut takes the design off the screen. Copy will copy that, and then you can paste it. And also we have our duplicate, which you are familiar with because we've had it on our other program, on our Pro Stitcher Standard. And then we have the Clear All here button as well. Okay, let's go over to our area. In our area, you will see my two-corner, my multi-point. You're familiar with that. You're also familiar with the clear. But we also have a select, so I can select the area. And so we've got this area, we have this area right here on our screen. I'm going to zoom in on that a little bit. So we can come down here and we can zoom to the area. I want to select that area. Why would I want to select an area? Select. Uh-oh, it turned it green. Well, now I can adjust it. I'm going to go down to Transform, and it added handles. I can now resize that area. Look at that. And by resizing it, it added dashed lines all the way around. Those dashed lines tells me, anytime I see an area with dashed lines, that tells me that it is not in its original position and size. So I have modified it. Modified, you see that word there? We'll go to that in a minute, but I have modified that design, and so I can adjust it just like I showed you on the designs themselves. I can change the size of that area, I can rotate that area, and I can also grab that area and move it. So from here on out, this area will always have dashed lines because it has been edited. It has been moved or resized or rotated. So if I were to save this and go to select, you'll see it's green because that's what I have selected. But if I were to go and work with something else and select my design, it goes back to its pink color. Okay? All right, I've gone, well, let's go back to area. Again, we talked about in our workspace, our sidebar, you'll see we have a workspace, we have an area created, and we have a group of designs. I can go between any one of those right there and work with what I need to work with. Let's go up to the top again, modify. Modify, you are familiar with design, the tab design that we had, our rotate, our reposition, resize, crop, align, skew. That is now has its own tab named modify. So we have our rotate, and if we were to refresh everything so we can see everything here, in modify, if I went to rotate, my functions in rotate are over here. So I can rotate as a group. So I could group these and rotate the whole group, or I could rotate each individually. I've got my 45-degree rotation counterclockwise and clockwise. I can reset that rotation. It gives me a keypad to do that. I've got my mirror, my flip, 2-point rotation, start and end, and I can put in a custom rotation. And here's my little tiny rotations here. Right now it's at 1 inch. I can place that at 0.01, which is 1/100th of an inch, or any size of rotation that I want. And I can also rotate that if I went over to transform and used the transform and the circle. So there are many ways of rotating your designs. Reposition, we have our reposition with our start point. So if I were to reposition this design with the start point, it would move to the start point of the crosshair. The start point would move to the crosshair. The end point, which they're kind of close together, the center of the design, there's my drag, but guess what? I have a drag over here because that's one of my quick access buttons, and I have that on my quick access, which I really like to have always available. 0 finds the 0 point, and each design has its own 0 point. So let's see where this one is. It's at the start point. Some will be at a corner or someplace else, just a matter according to what the designer chooses. I can do my top left, so this is the top left, will go to the crosshair. All right, let's kind of pan over so you can see what's going on here a little bit. Put that in the center. Top right, bottom. Now, I'm going to come down here. In our nudge, we had before 4 nudge buttons. Up and down and left and right. Now we have the angle nudge. So if I wanted to nudge this, and you can't see that nudge, but I'm actually going to type in 3 inches. And I want to nudge that down 3 inches. So you can place the amount of nudge you want, and now you have diagonal, top, bottom, any direction you want. Okay, let's move over to our resize. In our resize, the same functions that we've had before. We have our width, height, original width before a rotation, or after, this is before a rotation, that would be your original width and your original height. And then you can also type in any number that you want, or you can type in a no resize, and this is your lock aspect, so that it would resize your height and your width proportionate. Crop, our same crop functions. We have an outside crop, an inside crop, and our start and end crop. No crop if you don't want to crop. And this little edges, this is if you want a closed or an open. So if I press the button and it's activated, you see it closed off the little dashed lines, and it would create a stitching line between your crop, anything that was cropped, to get from your end point to the next start point. And so that would be your open crop where it is not selected, and if you select it, it is your closed crop, and you can see that went down the screen and tells you exactly what it did. If I don't want to crop, I can go ahead and press the no crop, and it would open everything up, and there would be no crop. Align. Here, this is our alignment tools, the left alignment, center, right. This is for horizontal, vertical alignment, top, center, bottom, and these are your stretch to the sides, and also it aligns it to the center or stretches to all 4 sides. This is kind of like a skew here. Okay, so we can see the next button in our modify is skew. With the skew, we have our skew 1 and our skew 2. So if I wanted to skew this into this area, I would skew 1. And if you had more complex multi-point area, you may be using your skew 2 or no skew. So let's go ahead and skew that in there. The swap button, you should be familiar with that. That is where it swaps your start and end point. In the standard version, you would have pressed the swap, and then there would have been a button at the bottom of your screen, and you would press that. This is a one-step button. You only press it once, and it does the swapping. So if we were to zoom in on this so you could see that and swap, you will see that it swapped those. I can swap that back. That's your start and end swap. Okay, now let's go to the next tab, repeat. Repeat gives me my basic repeat and my wrap. So I want to always start with basic and add repeats to this. And let's go ahead and let's go back to file for a minute. And we are going to, well, not to file, we're going to go to clear all. So I have this feather, I have this feather, and I have an area. This is not selected. It does not need to be selected for me to clear my screen. Okay, let's go into my continuous line and bring in a Baptist fan. All right, let's go to my area, and that's the tab area. Don't confuse it with this area where you save areas and you bring them in. I want to go to the tab area, and with my tab area I want to create an area. So I'm going to simulate, grab a hold of my crosshair, 2 corner, move my crosshair over here, 2 corner. It's giving me 22 by 13. So we'll just work with that for a minute. And we're going to adjust this design. Maybe we'll change this one to 24 inches and 24 inches. We'll just make that square. And we're going to zoom to area so you can see everything that we've got there. Now we're going to our repeat and our basic. Over here I want to work with horizontal first, and I could press the fit. We might as well just press it. It will fit as many of the original design that will fit within that area without skewing it or resizing it. So it did 2 across and 2 down. I want to add 1 more. So I'm going to, and I want it to be horizontal. So I need to select the horizontal button. And with that, I'm going to repeat another design across. Now, one thing that you're seeing here, or that you're maybe not seeing, is that you don't see your jump points here between these, because these are actually jumps. So I'm going to just jump ahead for a minute, and we're going to go to another tab, and we're going to view. This tab gives me a ribbon of things that I can view on the screen. So while we're here, we're just going to go through all of them. You're familiar with the ruler, except for this is a different ruler. On our Pro Stitcher Standard, it says ruler at the top right of your screen. Well, that ruler on this Pro Stitcher Premium is the measure. So we're changing the names. This allows me to measure. If I press that, it would give me my X and Y axis at 0, and then I could move my crosshairs. And I am moving my crosshairs with my mouse because I am doing this all in simulation. If you were doing it on your screen, you wouldn't see this X or this plus here. You would use your finger, or you would move the machine. If you were doing it in simulation on your actual Pro Stitcher with the machine, you could use your finger to move that crosshair. I'm using my mouse, and that's why you are seeing the plus. But if you were using your finger, you wouldn't see that plus. You'd just place your finger there, and you'd move it, and you'd get your measurement. Or you would move your machine, and it would move the crosshair to whatever, if you wanted to measure a block on your quilt. Anyway, so that's your measure, and I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. The next one is your grid. Now you remember that I changed my gears. I took the grid off of here. Told you there was another location we could get that grid, and it is under View and my grid. So I can turn my grid on. I like to work with my grid off unless I am using it for a specific purpose. Then I'll turn it on. So I'm going to clean up the screen there and turn it off. I have a scroll. This is going to place scroll bars across the bottom. These are pan bars. See how I can pan by scrolling my design up and down, or from right or left. Okay. Transparency. I'm going to turn that one on, and then I'm going to zoom in on this. And if you will see, it created a transparency around the outside border so you can see my design. It kind of gives me a larger workspace. Some quilters may like that, to be able to see that. You can turn that off and then it gives you that opaque so you won't be able to see behind it. My area, I can now turn off I'm going to turn off the scroll here. I am going to zoom to area so we can make that larger. I can turn off my area. It's gone. I can turn off my design. It's gone. I can turn off my bounding box and it's gone. Before, when we turned off the box, it turned off our area and our bounds. Today we can turn off one or the other. So I can turn on that area and there it is. I actually really would like my design to be on there. And the one thing that I said that we were missing is our jumps. They have been turned off, so I'm going to go ahead and turn those back on, and you can see how it jumps between each one. Okay, if I turned on the bounding box, you would see that around each one of those. This is called the rubber band, and the rubber band, I'm going to turn off the bounding box just so you can see, and the area, so you can see what the rubber band does. It creates a rubber band around the most outer points of the design. So you can see how that works, and there are different times you'll use that. Cropping is wonderful to use. Have your rubber band on, you can see what you cropped away and maybe what was left in. So that's a nice one to use in cropping. But I'm going to go ahead and turn that one off. I want my jumps on, and I do want my start and end. If I turned it off, it would still leave my jump area there. I like to have my start and end on for most of, and the area would be a good thing. So we know where we're putting this design. The last thing that I want to talk about is your ruler. So remember we talked about measure. That's how you can measure a distance on your quilt or on your design. Ruler, it places a ruler along the left and the top of your screen so you can see what the size of things are. So that's a nice function to have too. If you don't want it on, you can go ahead and turn that off. Cleans up your screen. All I need maybe is my design and my area and my crosshairs. All right, let's go back to our repeat. And in repeat, I've got this many horizontal, 3 across, and I'm going to go right now and press the point to point. I want my designs to snap together. I'm actually going to press select so I can have my cursor there. And I'm going to point right here, and it snapped them together. The next thing I want to do is I have space between here. In our standard version, we would delete space. It would be the distance. I would use the distance and do a negative. Well, today it is called gap, and I can do that with a minus, a plus, or type in a number. So I'm going to type in a minus 0.7 and enter. Okay, so you didn't see anything happen there, did you? Because the gap, we didn't need to change the gap here. It stayed where it is. It snapped together because I have the point to point. I need to go to my vertical. That's the difference today, is we either work with horizontal or we work with vertical. Okay, now let's do our gap. Negative 0.7. And it took that spacing out. It filled the gap, or it took the gap away. Okay? Now, in my vertical, I think I need another row. So let's add a row. And they're outside, they're inside. So I may do a stretch vertical, go to my horizontal, and stretch my horizontal. All right, and if you don't like the way that looks, you could always go back to a vertical and add another one if you like them a little flatter. It's your choice. All right, we have this problem here, blank spaces. We'll go to our wrapping. We're going to wrap horizontal. So I need to press the horizontal button. And this is a window I'm working with, so I need to work with the window. And I think I'm just going to press the half button, and it gives me a half at the end and wraps around and fills it in. If I feel like I need some vertical, then I can go ahead and change to the vertical button. But I may not like the way things are wrapped, so I can go ahead and use my directional arrows and just roll that until I like what I have. And we'll work with that in a minute a little bit more. But let's go to our vertical. Let's do the same thing, vertical window, half, and maybe I don't like that much cropped off, so I'm going to go ahead and roll that down, or roll it up. Just right at there. There, that looks good. Now, I want to close it because it's all jumps. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to my edges. We talked about that in crop. The same thing here, edges and close. I can see that it closed the top. I have some issues on the side. So I'm going back to my horizontal. I'm going to roll that until I can see that I only have one red dot, which is there. Now it's perfect. The last thing I would do is I would go and baseline. Where's my baseline? I have it on my quick access tools. Baseline, it's ready to quilt. Okay, it's ready to quilt. Let's go quilt. Where do I find quilt across here? Pro Stitcher. Pro Stitcher, here's my ribbon of tools. Half stitch button, full stitch. Here's my follow. I have the measure here, but I already have it here. Quilt, this is where you're going to quilt. There's my run button. If I press the run button, it would go ahead, it would bring up my settings. If I needed to change something in my settings, it brings those settings up here. And if I didn't have something selected, then I would select it here. If I didn't want to, if I wanted to just air stitch, I could turn off my stitch and then it would just air stitch, but that's not what I want to do. So I want to turn on all of these functions and I would start stitching. But we're going to go ahead and cancel that. Let's go across the top. This is where you'll find your channel lock, your horizontal, your vertical. Also, I have it in my quick access tools. Your move, continuous move. This moves so we can go ahead and press the arrow, the direction we want to move, and it will move in that direction. We can change that any direction we want to. This is great for basting a quilt or for doing stitch in the ditch. You can set your speed. You can stitch or just air stitch. Okay, the next one is our new start end. In our sidebar, you'll see all of the functions here. My auto button, that's the start auto, so that I can automatically move that start point if my thread broke over here. Touch that, turn that off. If it's not quite where I want it to be, maybe I want to zoom in on this. I'm going to zoom in, and then I could move my crosshair maybe over here, but while I've got this zoomed in, I wouldn't need to move my crosshair over there. I could just do my arrow, or I could move my slider. And see, I don't even know where my slider is now. So we better refresh home so we can see where I took it to. So let's do the start auto, and it'll automatically place it there, and then turn that off. There's my start or my end auto and all the functions with that. The bottom arrows are my jump arrows to jump through different jumps. So if I were to jump, you can see how it jumps through each row and the jumps through that. Take that right back up to the top. Right there's where we started. Okay, the next button in this ribbon is the record button. This is where you can mark and create your own straight line quilting. This is where you can record. If you want to record your name or you want to record a design, this is where you would find these functions. The gears, this is where you disable your motors. It is orange. The crosshairs are orange. If I touch it, it turns purple. The crosshairs are purple. That is free motion quilting without any motors engaged. Okay. The other button is your clear trace, so that if as you're stitching along and it creates that orange over the top of your design, if you want to clear that off, you can clear the trace off. Okay, let's go all the way across the top here. This button is your, what does that button mean? So I press it, and any button that I press, it gives me information on that button. Record, it tells me, this is right out of your manual, tells me what it does. Okay, the next one, we'll go ahead and turn that off, is your motors. This is your disable or enable motors. So if I want to lock those motors, I press that and it locks them. You can see the little lock, or unlocks them. So you can move your machine around. All right, let's go back up to the top. We've gone through all of the functions on the ribbon of ProStitcher. View, we've already gone through all of these. And the last button that we have is Tools. This is where you'll find Art and Stitch. From here, you can go into your Art and Stitch. You can work with your designs, manipulate them. If you have your Art and Stitch activated, it will go. You can go back and forth between the two programs, manipulate a design, change some points, bring it back. It will save it. If you don't move it on the ProStitcher screen, it will come back in the very same location you have it on your ProStitcher screen. The last buttons that I want to talk about are the buttons up across the top here. Now, I accidentally one day thought, oh, I need to disable my motors, and I just automatically put my finger up here and I pressed the X. Well, it closed my program down. But what we have now is we have a screen will pop up, a box will pop up and ask you if you really want to do that, so you don't really lose what you have done, which was a good thing, is a good thing. If you do want to close your program down, this is not the place you want to do it. You can if you want, but the place to do it is go to File, the ribbon across the top there is a shutdown, and then you would press shutdown or exit to Windows, whatever you're wanting to do. But there is your shutdown. There are so many wonderful functions or new features in this, and just the new look of it. We know that you love what you have now. You're going to love this even more. Enjoy.